Alright, so since Okita Alter is now out on NA for the Guda Guda 3 rerun, I'll do my video comparing Okita Alter to Kingprotea. If you enjoy daily FGO content, consider giving your boy that like and subscribe. We're on the road to 10k, and I upload these videos every single day, so if that's something that intrigues you or interests you, go ahead and give your boy that like and subscribe. Also, if you want to go that extra mile in supporting me and helping the channel out, click that join button and get access to a bunch of like emojis and little channel perks and whatever. But with that being said, let's get into this comparison, and let me go ahead and get out ahead of all of this and just say this right at the beginning. No matter what I say in this video, if you want to use Okita Alter or Kingprotea, you're going to be absolutely fine. If I say that Okita Alter is better than Kingprotea, that does not mean that Kingprotea is a bad servant that you cannot use. If I say Kingprotea takes a fat wet dookie on Okita Alter, that does not mean that she's not good, she's a bad waifu, you can't use her, and you're wrong for liking her, right? That's not what any of that means. I'm merely comparing both of the servants and giving my opinion on who I think is better, right? Because a lot of there's a lot of objective things we can look at. Like, we can look at their damage, we can look at how their kits are built, but at the end of the day, there's going to be some level of preference that comes down to both of these servants. For instance, let's look at their decks, right? Okita Alter has a 2 buster, 2 quick, 1 arts deck, whereas Kingprotea has 2 buster, 2 arts, and 1 quick. Now, me personally, I prefer Kingprotea's deck because as a buster servant, it gives her both buster cards, which is good for doing big buster damage. That's the whole point of the buster archetype, right? But then it also gives her the ability to do arch chains a lot easier with the support she's going to be using. Whereas Okita Alter, she can still arch chain with, say, double Merlin or like a Merlin and a Waver. It's going to be a lot harder because she's missing one of those arts cards. And I just don't like that style of gameplay, right? I don't like having that one less arts card on a buster servant. But for Okita Alter, that's the whole point of how they built her kit. If you look at her first skill, they clearly want you to go for a buster quick hybrid style of gameplay. And they even gave her very high hits on her quick cards. They gave her very good NP charge for attack so that her quick cards can kind of function as pseudo arts cards, right? They have very good hits, and they have the buff from her first skill, so they gen a lot of stars, and that way you can get crits on them, and then they actually do gen like decent amounts of NP. Now, I say decent because if you're just going off of Okita Alter's self buffs, you're not using anybody else's like NP generation buffs, you're not using Scotty to really bring out the power of those quick cards, she's probably going to get like 15 to 25% NP if she gets like a quick crit, right? As long as she has her first skill off. That's at least what I've encountered when using her, right? It's somewhere around there. Her arts card can get very insane if you can get a crit on it. You can gen like 60% of your NP back with an arts crit, right? Keep in mind, results may vary depending on what enemies you're fighting, as different enemies allot different NP values when attacking them, right? So when it comes down to their decks, I do prefer Kingprotea's. I prefer this more as just like ease of getting your NP back after firing it the first time. Also, she has the 6 hit on the extra attack, which if you didn't know, the extra card really helps in tying your deck together, because a little bit of a FGO game mechanic lesson, right? We have the Buster card, which does the most damage, has a small value to generate stars, and doesn't have an innate value to gen NP. That doesn't mean it's impossible for it to gen NP, but if you use a normal Buster card, you do like a Buster chain, you don't get any NP for using those Buster cards, right? It has no innate value on its own to gen NP. Arts cards have the highest value for genning NP, have the like most midline damage, and have no value for generating stars. Then quick cards are kind of like the balance, right? They have the lowest damage value, but they have the highest value for genning stars and a mid value for genning NP. The extra attack is basically a composite card. It does big damage, it gens NP, and it generates stars. So it's like the best of like both worlds, basically, right? So her having a higher extra attack is just more appeasing to me than Okita Alter having kind of this mishmash deck with only 5 hits, whereas she has like a deck that I prefer for Buster Servants and a better extra attack, right? Now, that being said, I do like using Okita Alter. This is a fun style of gameplay that I really like because it kind of breaks up the usual monotony, right? I see this as like kind of standard good Buster deck, so I prefer it, but I do like getting the occasional break to use something like this. So I'm saying it's not as good in my opinion, but I do really like it because it is different, right? So, you know, follow me on that one. Now, as Buster AoE servants, there's really like 3 things we got to look at. They're going to be farming servants. They're supposed to do a lot of damage because you're going to want them to be able to farm, right? As Buster servants especially. And then we need to look at their survivability, because what if you want to bring them into a challenge quest, which is kind of one of the big appeals for alter ego servants, because they can hit numerous different classes for super effective damage, right? All cavalry classes, meaning riders, assassins, casters, and berserkers. They have super effective damage against all of them, and they do resisted damage to saber, archer, and lancer, right? So don't bring them against those, right? But that's one of the appeals of using them. They're pseudo berserkers, like, for lack of a better term. So just looking at their damage straight up, Kingprotea is going to be doing more damage than Okita Alter. Now keep in mind, this is with Okita Alter's buff on JP. She has a buff where she gets 30% or 20%, my bad, 20% attack for 3 times for 3 turns, right? And this is with that. So with this buff on JP, at base, she does more damage than Kingprotea, but you gotta remember that this right here, which allows her to actually out damage Okita Alter, this is like the easiest thing for her to get active. It's literally like, if you pop skill 1, you now do more damage than Okita Alter, and you want this active at all times. The only way you like lose this buff is if you pop her second skill to consume all of your stacks and convert them into NP. Now, this is like really good if you want to do like a loop for your NP. Say that you have 5 stacks and like you already popped your NP, and you know you used it, you gen like more NP, like you got some arts cards and you built up a second NP, and then now you want to fire a third NP, you consume all your stacks, you get 100% back, you know, stuff like that. You can kind of work out when and where you want to like consume your stacks to get a whole bunch of NP back, right? So despite all that, I don't think people really use it for that. I think people rather just build up all these stacks, especially right now on JP, because this got buffed and now she builds up damage reduction against NPs, meaning really the only thing that can kill Kingprotea is like crits, or she gets really unlucky early on in the fight, because it is somewhat of a negative for her. She can take a while to build up, but irregardless, Kingprotea more often than not is going to be doing more damage than Okita Alter, and that's kind of bad initially because Okita Alter is a Buster servant, right? And damage is like one of their main things. And so if you're losing to another Buster servant in terms of damage, it's a heavy blow against you. Now, in terms of farming, you're probably going to have an easier time bringing out Okita Alter, because she has the immediate 30% battery, and that's going to be a bit easier to use than Kingprotea only having 20% at the start. Now, if you have like a K-scope or something, you're going to be fine. But if you only have what is it called? The Imaginary Element CE, the Limit Broken Sakura CE, where you need 30% or, you know, 25%, but most servants have to use 30% because having 25% battery is very rare. Just, it's normally 20 or 30%. They work in tens, but if you have that to work with, Kingprotea is going to need 2 stacks. That means you have to wait a whole nother turn before you can actually consume those to get her NP back. And the downside is you have to consume your stacks, which give you more damage in order to get NP. So that's kind of a bonus that I think Okita Alter has going for her, is that at least for farming, her damage should be a bit more consistent depending on how you're using it. Because it's like anytime you just bring Okita Alter, pop her battery, pop all of her skills, and then just let her do damage, right? Whereas Kingprotea, depending on what you're doing, you might lose out on damage, you might have to consume stacks, you know, you might have to wait a few turns to get extra stacks to consume for NP. So Kingprotea takes a little bit more brain power to use. It's a little more big brain thinky time to use that. Whereas Okita Alter is head empty, you know, smash, kill things, right? But then that's when we get into survivability, where I mean, Okita Alter's got 1 dodge. That's all she's got. So even if Kingprotea is very slow to build up, after like 1 to 3 turns, Kingprotea is good to go. She can't be killed. The only thing that's going to kill her is like if the enemy just crits the living daylights out of you. They just have to wail on Kingprotea to kill her because she's got tons of HP. Like she gets up to like 80k HP, you know, potentially higher if you got like grails into her and stuff. And she's got like upwards of like 60 to 80% damage reduction depending on where you're at your stacks, which means if an NP is going to hit you for like 100,000, you're now taking 20k from that NP, right? And you have like 80 to 100k HP. So who cares if you lose a fifth of that, right? You really don't care. And then if normal attacks are doing like, I don't know, maybe you're losing like 5, 6, 10,000 HP every other turn, like you don't really care, right? You're not losing too much and you're doing a lot of damage back. So Kingprotea is going to be like much more fine defensively once she starts building up, whereas Okita Alter really only has 1 dodge, and that's something that I feel like they're going to buff in the future because this is just not good enough. This is not good enough for her to be able to survive. Now, if we want to talk about external factors, we can talk about Merlin. Merlin is the buster support, so you're probably going to be using him with Okita and Kingprotea, and he helps them out immensely. He gives Okita a extra line of defense with his invincibility, and Kingprotea, although I think she gets way more from Merlin than Okita Alter does. Okita Alter gets the extra layer of survivability, and then she gets the ability to do crits where she provides her own stars. So she has a little bit better buster crit synergy. But Kingprotea literally becomes immortal with Merlin. Merlin can protect her very early on while she's getting set up, and then with his NP, he's replenishing the HP that she's lost. So Merlin and Kingprotea makes a very nasty, like, stall, big boy damage combo. But I also don't want to diminish how Okita Alter synergizes with Merlin, because again, Kingprotea might struggle a bit more because of her lack of, you know, powerful quick cards to gen stars, whereas Okita Alter, 2 quick cards, or you do like a quick buster quick chain, you're going to be genning a hell of a lot of stars that turn. You're going to be doing very well, especially with Merlin's second skill. Now, that is going to one of the things that I think Okita Alter needs. If, when, or whatever, they buff her NP, give it like the 100% crit star generation just for 1 turn, and we're going to have an absolute monster on our hand. Because I feel like out of everything that Okita Alter is lacking, that's the main thing that she's going to need, right? Because that would put her on the same level as like Emiya, Raikou, Iskandar, these buster servants that have massive crit star gen, and their NPs just turn into crit star bombs, and they drop like just a metric butt ton of stars for them to play with and then do big crit damage with, right? That's going to make Okita Alter a really good DPS, because then at that point, who cares if she's like 2,000 behind in NP damage? Her crit damage is going to be insane, right? So if they give her that, I'm more than willing to like more lean towards Okita Alter. But Kingprotea right now is looking like the more sustainable, safe choice to go with over Okita Alter. Like she's going to be fine in farming. She's going to be doing the better damage. Her survivability is very good. Whereas Okita Alter's a bit wonky right now. Once she gets her buff, Okita Alter becomes a lot more comparable, because when I think of the two, I'm thinking of this when she gets her buff, and their damage is very, very comparable, with Okita Alter having a lead if they just both have like their normal stuff going on, right? Or like Kingprotea's already consumed her stack. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you think is better between Okita Alter and Kingprotea? I'll say that I think Kingprotea is the better choice to go with, but I would personally use Okita Alter over Kingprotea because I like Okita Alter more. I like her style of gameplay a bit more. I like the ability where she's able to make her own stars and everything, right? I like this Buster Quick style of gameplay. I've really enjoyed bringing like Merlin, Okita Alter, and Scotty. I feel like that's a really, really fun team comp to bring to like certain quests. It's a lot of fun for me. I'd advise you guys to try it out, but Kingprotea just seems like the safer option, right? It just seems like you're going to be a-okay survival, like in terms of survivability. It seems you're going to be doing more damage consistently, especially right now on NA. And I mean, yeah, it's just, she just seems more consistent. That's kind of the main thing I'm going with. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Hopefully, you know, we don't have the Vlad versus Galatea situation where I upload Vlad versus Galatea and then literally a few weeks later they're like, we're gonna buff Vlad, which I know it's not true, but I like to believe that me bad-mouthing Vlad led to him getting his buffs. And hey, I'm very happy to see Vlad getting buffs. A lot of people have him and a lot of people love using him in their arts team, so I'm glad that that happened. Hopefully, you know, this means Okita Alter is going to get her NP buff or a third skill buff coming up soon in the next couple of weeks, or maybe part of this upcoming rank up quest. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice